Time for our Friday conversation with one of the rising stars in women's basketball. You are at Locked on Women's Basketball.
You are Locked on Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And a happy Friday morning to you, although I know it is technically Wednesday as we're recording this, but this is our Friday conversation at Locked on Women's Basketball. I'm your host, Howard Megdal, founder and editor at The Next, and I am joined by Thibault-DuDonis, who, I said this off air before we got here, this was always just a matter of when, not if, where Carly was going to get to the point where she had her own program. So, Coach, first of all, congratulations and welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to be a part of the Stags fam.
We've been expecting you. So let's talk first, if we could, about how you got here. People ought to know. I use the phrase the Kennedys of women's basketball coaching. Do you think that is a fair way to put it? Would you put it differently? How do you guys think of this family, with Mike Thibault, who, all of you know, and Blake, of course, who has coached as well, and Eric as an assistant with the Mystics. There's so much coaching talent there. Is the Kennedys a fair and accurate designation?
It depends on how you want to look at it. It could be that. It could be the mafia because you just can't get rid of us. I don't know. However you want to look at it, but we're obviously all over the map in women's basketball. But I feel really blessed to have great people in my corner.
You grew up in Connecticut, when Mike was coaching the Sun for this extended period of time. How much, because I am quite certain this was not the only program that had come to talk to you along the way, that how much was going home, in a sense, a critical part of your thinking when it came to coming to Fairfield?
It was a big part of it, among a lot of other reasons. But it had been a long time since I'd been, within driving distance of anybody in my family. It'd been almost 9 years, so it just felt like the right time to come back to this area. And obviously, Connecticut's an area that I'm comfortable with, have lived in, played high school basketball, AAU basketball in this area. So for a lot of reasons, it was a great fit, among other things, like I said. But it was nice to be able to have my mom at the press conference yesterday, and just a train ride up. So there's a lot of, awesome benefits to be so close to family.
And in terms of your mom, are there a lot of other family in Connecticut? Is it, what is the family situation like? And, how many tickets does that mean you're going to have to put aside for every game?
So from a relative standpoint, there's not a ton in Connecticut. That's, we always have joked that our whatever team or, program we've been with has always been our basketball family, because we've had relatives, more so actually on the West Coast. But as we've moved so much with jobs of my dad and myself, there's not really been relatives in that area. But so my most of my family is in DC. My husband's family is in North Carolina. So both East Coast. But I have a ton of friends from high school and college that are still in this area. So from that standpoint, there will definitely be a need for tickets.
In terms of Blake and getting him accustomed to the Northeast, what are kind of the watchwords you've given him as a way of, getting him comfortable here in what we both know is the best region of the country?
Well, he actually has coached on the East Coast and on the Northeast before. So his first coaching job was at MAAC up in Massachusetts, and he coached at Buffalo. That's actually where we met when he was at Buffalo and I was at Eastern Michigan. So he's familiar with the Northeast for sure. Which is nice, that he's excited to come back to some seafood and some things like that. But yeah, we're both pretty familiar, maybe not so much with Connecticut, but I think we'll both just have to reacquaint ourselves with the driving on 95.
Oh, God. I have long advocated for there being specific lanes in Connecticut for people who are connected to women's basketball. I've said we could brand them as Lobo lanes. It's just something, just bring it up, just something to keep in mind. I'm hoping the powers that be.
Keep it in the atmosphere.
I'm not convinced that Buffalo counts as the Northeast. It feels more Midwest than Northeast to me, but
Fair.
I'm willing to allow it. I'm willing
But he
to.
did. Well, the counter argument to that is that he's recruited in New York and recruited in this area when he was there. So he did recruit this, this area. But I agree, it's in the MAAC, the other MAAC. So it's definitely a Midwest conference.
This is very true. Now, the MAAC is just an excellent conference as a whole. I'm wondering where you see it on the pecking order and how much you see it as a particular launching pad for a program. What do you think a MAAC program can and should be if you get it to the maximum place it ought to be?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I requote Paul, our AD, that said it best, is that while we had a great year last year, we don't necessarily look at it as a pinnacle, but we look at it as a springboard into what we can do. So obviously the team last year went to the NCAA tournament. But I do think we're a league that can produce teams like Quinnipiac has shown before, that you can make some noise in the tournament. I played at Monmouth, which last year was in the MAAC, but we weren't in the MAAC when I played. We were in the NEC. So I do think obviously the MAAC is a step up, and it's a league that you can be recognized for sure. And there's some great teams, so there's great competition every night.
Yeah, Trish's Quinnipiac team showed you could play with anybody. You could play with anybody,
exactly.
and that pro up and down the MAAC, the basketball is just fantastic to see on a consistent basis. If you think about the MAAC, and I'm just wondering if you do, to a similar launching pad to what Gonzaga has been able to be out west. Do you see that as something comparable in terms of being able to consistently either get high double digit or even low single digit seeds in the NCAA tournament year in and year out?
Eventually, I think that took a lot of years in the making.
Okay.
But I think that now, women's basketball has showed that anything is possible there. And I definitely think the MAAC has shown that they can be a really competitive basketball conference. In the NCAA tournament this past year, we all watched it. We've all watched teams like Creighton and South Dakota that have done that, and they've been good. And so I think it's just continuing to show that you can stay on top of the MAAC, and then continue to schedule well, put yourself in a position in the non-conference, so then you can, like you said, jump up to some higher seeds.
The building block of coming into a team that's won 25 games is not usually something you get when you get to come take over your own program. I mean, how much did that play a part? Because again, being in Minnesota, which we should get into shortly, because you had incredible success over there before coming here. How much did it matter that this was a program that in a lot of ways was turnkey?
Yeah, I love that the women know how to win. That's a really hard mindset to develop. It's a culture that you have to develop, and usually takes a long time. So the women know how to win. And now it's just, trying to keep this core group together. I know the transfer portal is crazy everywhere, but trying to keep this core group together. So that's a huge part of just developing a winning culture, though, is that mindset and the work ethic that it takes to win.
Let's talk about the transfer culture and the way in which it affects things. But first, we're going to pay some bills. We're going to talk about Built Bar, which is something that for those of you who have given up on your New Year's resolution is something to look into. You can eat candy bars every day. These are protein-infused marshmallow bars covered in 100% real chocolate, but they're only 130 calories, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. So if you are, and I'm not speaking about anyone specifically, but let's say covering the NCAA tournament and not having time to work out very much, it was a chance to stay relatively in shape while I got through Minneapolis in the Final Four and got home. And so Built Bar is a thing that allows you to enjoy indulgences while at the same time enjoying all those flavors without a lot of the guilt that goes along with it. 130 calories, 4 grams net carbs. So you go to built.com and you use code LOCKED15, LOCKED15, and you can try these Built Bars and see what you think. It's our discount code. It's one that's used by my mom all the time, and she loves it. So again, built.com, tell them Grandma Myrna sent you. So let's talk about, I just want people to have the context for this, right? You're Mississippi State, and in a total coincidence, you guys were bringing in these elite recruiting classes year after year. Then you go to Minnesota, and it's a top 10 recruiting class. And not only was it top 10, but the thing that really struck me is it's all Minnesota grown. So you are going to different regions of the country and recruiting where you're at. and you're taking that fertile ground and turning it into the players that help build a program. How do you consistently do that? What are like the basic watchwords that have allowed you to succeed in this way everywhere you've been?
I think for me so far, not having been a head coach and been an assistant coach and a recruiting coordinator, is I think you have to be intentional to recruit to your head coach and what your head coach wants to coach and who they are and their style. And that's what, I was able to do for Coach Schaefer, is find players that fit him. And then the same thing, this current recruiting class and some that have come before it at Minnesota, same thing is players that that fit Coach Whalen. And then I think it's just, being really authentic in your relationships, a lot of consistent communication, whether it's phone calls and FaceTimes and text messages and Snapchats and, whatever else, following them on TikTok and being able to really know what's going on in their life. And not just having kind of the same conversation over and over again, is, being able to know what's going on and talk to their family, talk to the surrounding people, whether it's, mom, dad, grandma, high school coach, AAU coach, sibling. There's a lot of people that impact a decision of a young woman. So trying to make inroads with everyone around them, high school teacher or president, principal, whoever it is. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just being really authentic, being intentional to match that person with the program and the head coach. And then just being really consistent in your communication.
When you have those communications, when a player commits, does it feel like there's a need to continue to recruit even the players that you already have, just because the transfer portal has become such a significant part of the landscape?
Absolutely. I think that's something that, while you have to re-recruit them every year, I think it's just also how you operate day to day, is that you continue to show them that they have value and that you value them. But every year, you could do everything right, and now somebody could still decide to transfer because they can. And there's not a lot of restrictions on it, and there's not a lot holding somebody back now, other than they just love the place, they love the school, they love their teammates. There's a lot of reasons, but now somebody just can transfer because they can. So you can do everything right and they can still go, or you can do everything right and you obviously can keep your team together. But there are a lot of factors with the transfer portal. It's a little bit of a perfect storm, as we talk about a lot, because with COVID, everybody got an extra year to play with. So a lot of times now someone's been 4 years at a school and is like, well, I've got a 5th year to go do what I want. Everybody had a bigger roster. Not everybody, most teams had a bigger roster this year, because you could exceed the 15 scholarship roster limit with some super seniors. So a lot of teams had 2, 3, 4, 5 players that didn't play this year.
Right.
And then the one-time transfer rule changed within the past year. So you've got 3 factors that just kind of really exaggerate the transfer portal this year.
Do you think these are one-time factors, or do you think this is the new reality going forward? What's your read on it?
A little bit of both. I think it will be a little bit inflated these next couple of years until that extra COVID year is no longer a factor. But I do think it's now, you're going to just see more transfers because, like I said, you can. You don't have the redshirt year or anything like that. You don't have any restrictions on interconference or anything like that. So there's you still see it, but I think it'll be inflated the next couple of years.
To the other side of it, which obviously, there's movement in coaching. This is, as we talked about, this was a matter of when, not if. But how hard was it for you to move on from University of Minnesota and, everything that you guys were building over there?
It was probably the hardest decision I've had to make. I loved working for Coach Whalen first and foremost. We had the best staff. I loved the people I worked with every day. They were family. And I enjoyed working. I enjoyed going to work. I could spend time with anybody on our staff and have a good time. And then I just think that that's a special group coming together for the next couple of years in Minnesota. They want to do it the right way. They're invested in one another. That incoming class is great. And they've already meshed so well with our returners there. So it was really hard. But I told all of them, I'll be your biggest fan cheering in Connecticut. And there's a lot of them because there's a lot of Lindsay Whalen fans in Connecticut. So I'll be the biggest one.
I don't doubt it for a second. So you come to Fairfield, where obviously, again, 25 wins last year is a significant place to start, but it's also in a lot of ways a team you get to put your own stamp on. So I'm wondering, now that you finally did a chance to do that, what does that look like? And I'll just give one example, right? You guys were 342nd in the country in pace. It was not a team that played fast, to put it mildly. Is that the type of thing that changes? Take me through sort of the way in which you think you can put your stamp on, what this group is already.
Yeah, so a lot of credit to Coach Frager because they did a lot of things right, and they were really efficient offensively, but they did play a little bit slower. And so that is, you hit the nail on the head. That's something that I've talked with the women about, of that should bode well because they are good offensive players to have more possessions in the game. And so that's a big thing for me, is playing with more pace. And sometimes that looks like scoring in transition, and sometimes that looks like just getting the ball up quicker and getting into something quicker. But they were really good in kind of a set oriented offense in the last few years. So finding a happy medium of what this team is really strong at, but playing with more possessions in the game. So I will steal and do what they did really well, but kind of put my own stamp on it as well.
And so I would imagine, I've never talked to a player in all my years covering who was like, oh, I want to play slower. I would imagine that helps with this conversation as you're talking to players, about staying and about, continuing the work.
Well, I have been really transparent with them because every player in the country says they want to play fast, like you said. But then you say, okay, well, then we have to run and we have to get in shape. And that's kind of the reality that sometimes has to set in. But I've been really transparent. Like, we're going to have to get in better shape. We're going to have to run. We're going to have to, do everything with more pace, which they all are. They all understand. And that's not a surprise. So that's the kind of the caveat with it, is like, okay, that's great, but now we got to get on the line and run.
Very true. And so as you look for your own brand of players, as you recruit in this area, what do you, Connecticut obviously has a really rich talent base, as you yourself are an example of. There's throughout the Northeast, New Jersey is super rich with talent as well. What does your recruiting base look like as you sort of think and build out?
Well, that's the neat thing. You said it. There's a great surrounding area. However, I do think you can still pull, like, one of their starting point guard last year was from Minnesota, ironically. So you can pull from some of those Midwest states where there's not as many of these, like, Minnesota, there was just Minnesota and now St. Thomas, if you want to play Division I. So there's been schools across the country that have really recruited places like Minnesota, Wisconsin, the Dakotas, Iowa, really strong. So that's something that I continue kind of to use some of my background in. And then they've also had a lot of success with international players, which I've coached at all my stops pretty much, and played with when I played in college. I think there's a lot of value there. So you can pull. Yep.
I was just going to say, is that something easier to do now than it was 5 years ago? Is there a greater network of international talent that allows you easier connection to those players?
It's definitely more common. I don't know if that makes it easier because now more schools are doing it. But it is more common. There's I won't say every team, but a ton of teams in the country now have internationals. And that's a perk for us, with us being so close to New York. We're a 45-minute drive from LaGuardia, so you can get in and out easily from pretty much anywhere in Europe.
And less than an hour drive from my house, which makes it easier.
There you go.
About that too. In terms of just like bigger picture for this program, what does the 3 to 5 year arc of success look like in your mind as you sort of plot it out?
Yeah, so I mean, this year will obviously be a year that we would, if we can get everybody to come back and stay, then I think we can challenge for another MAAC championship. And then there's some ifs with that, but that's the goal every year. Because we're, like you said, we're not starting from scratch, but it's also not it's not a given either. But I think for us in 3 to 5 years, we want to be competing for that MAAC championship every single year. And then the next step for us is to be able to compete in that first game in the NCAA tournament. And I think, again, that takes a lot of things to go right and a lot of work between now and then. But I don't think that's out of the question in the next 5 years.
I don't think it is. I would be very surprised if it doesn't happen, just full disclosure. So I want to talk to you a little bit about just what it is like to be in a family of coaches. But real quick, I've got one more bill to pay. And that is betonline.net, your number one source for all betting stats and sports info. Find your latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NBA playoffs and the start of the MLB season. For me, why it matters, though I do not bet, is that there is significant women's basketball lines, both at the collegiate and at the pro level. That is important. That is vital for equality in terms of eyeballs on the sport. So go to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn about the trends in action. BetOnline is where the game starts. And so in terms of where the game starts for the Thibault clan, I just wonder, all right, you're, like, for instance, you're watching a game with Blake, you're watching a game with your dad, with your brother. Are you critiquing it the way, for instance, my father, who is an attorney, critiques every legal drama he sees? Is it in a different way when the family gets together to watch basketball? Take me through what that is like.
For us, I think it's just an everyday thing. I don't know if we think about it as any different, but I think we do watch, or there's a lot of times that we'll write down and we'll rewind a play. Well, now everything you can rewind. So you rewind and write something down, or you say, hey, I like that, or you steal little nuances of the game here and there. Or you, especially end of game situations, you're like, would you foul here? Would you take one? Would you, that conversation all the time. And so that's kind of a given in our household. And people always joke with Blake and I, is like, don't you guys talk about anything else, or is it hard to separate it? I'm like, no, it's what we do. And that's the fun thing about being a basketball coach, is it's not a 9 to 5. It's an all day, every day, who you are type of thing. So there's not much time, many times when a game's on and we're not talking about it or analyzing it or stealing something from it.
There is not a 2-for-1 situation that goes by that I don't think about your husband from conversations I've had with him about that. So that makes a lot of sense to me. And then just even to bring it full circle, what was that conversation with your dad like when you finally got this offer, when you finally taken this job? You've been in coaching, obviously, but getting that head coaching gig had to be a different conversation. Take me through where you were and what that was like.
Well, he's been telling me I've been ready for a while, and I have not. Truth be told, I haven't felt ready. And that's a huge testament to Lindsay. She's really helped me and prepared me, given me a lot of autonomy and some other things. So, but he's been telling me I'm ready, and he was equally as excited about this opportunity for a lot of reasons. A place you can win, a place we're familiar with. It's close. It's great. Somewhere you can recruit. Great academic institution, and then people in the athletic department and administration that not only want you to win, but want to help you win. Mm-hmm. And so that's, he's been in a lot of different situations where that matters. That really does matter. And so I think from a lot of fronts, he was, really excited, equally as excited as I was because of those things.
What was there, though, also an emotional component to it? I mean, all of that makes sense, right? But I can imagine there had to be a certain emotional resonance at that moment where he gets to see his daughter, following in this way.
Yep. So I think my mom's starting to get a bad rap, but my mom cried. My dad got it. My dad, hooped and hollered a little bit. So they were definitely both excited. He was bummed he couldn't be at the press conference due to the WNBA training camp, but the family was definitely excited. And then the other kind of caveat is my brother's in-laws are right down the road. So we had some other people in Connecticut too.
I mean, just to be clear, your mom being emotional about your success, that is not, no one will call that a bad rap. I refuse to say it that way.
You got called out in the press conference a couple times for crying. I think that's where.
Right. Exactly. Listen, I have children, and I cry at the drop of a hat when they do anything. So I fully can relate to your mom on this front. But listen, Carly Thibault-DuDonis, this is, like I said, was a matter of time. The success is a matter of time. I look forward to covering the program. I look forward to covering you winning the NCAA tournament game. It's just a matter of time. And before we go, just the final read to make sure that people know, thank you for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. Some people may not know this, but men also play basketball, and Locked On NBA covers it. And so from the first jump ball, the play-in tournament, to the last possession of the finals, you can also follow the men's league, Locked On NBA. In fact, I understand that Mike Thibault was an assistant in the NBA back in the day. So back with the Chicago Bulls. So yes, in fact, there is men's basketball too. You can also follow it. It's not just about women's basketball, right? Locked on NBA. So, Carly, thank you for your time. Really glad you were here with us and wishing you all the best.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Howard, for all that you've done in women's basketball. It makes a difference.
It's my pleasure.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.